We'll replay it later.
Yeah. Over at CSULB. The government sucks. Waiting for Candace to come out. Right here with Emily. David's outside battling. He's at war right now.
With protesters.
Antifa.
Yeah, that was funny.
I love this one though. Look, there's no true freedom without economic freedom. Oh, Kanye. You're playing Kanye West right now too?
Yep. Oh yeah. Smash that like button. Drop a comment.
Yeah, big crowd there to shut the doors, couldn't let anybody else in. Why are there protesters outside, Larissa?
Because Candace Owens is a white supremacist, that's why.
Apparently, right?
Yeah, and they're mad because Republicans are evil. So.
They're mad because she broke out of the plantation.
Yeah.
And they're still stuck on it.
Basically.
Good evening. It's not like there's a World Series game going down like so. We're back, right? All right. Good evening. My name is Eric Aldana. I am the student president here at Turning Point USA at Cal State Long Beach, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to Turning Point USA's Campus Clash. Thank you. Thank you to everyone that made this event happen tonight. Thank you to our SLD advisor in the back, Anna. This event would not happen. All the emails, all the walk-ins and out to your office, it was all you. Thank you, Anna.
Woo!
Thank you to Arlene for booking this beautiful venue for us. Thank you to behind the scenes, all the AV techs, all the building managers, really from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to the campus police department for protecting the staff. We have two halves. Our first half will be a panel discussion by our guest speakers, Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk. Our second half, the Q&A portion, you can go ahead and walk through the rows. We'll have some lines right over here, 2 lines actually. Candace and Charlie prefer that people disagree with them to come to the front.
I don't think anybody has the guts.
So Turning Point USA, it's a 501c3 nonprofit founded by Charlie Kirk in 2012, thank God. It was built on the principles of freedom, free markets, and limited government.
Yeah! Freedom!
It started out small, but it has soon grown onto 1,300 campuses across the United States. So without further ado, I give you our Executive Director, Charlie Kirk, and Communications Director, Candace Owens.
Fighting through the protesters. We did see them on the way in. So I'd like to start off the evening by first and foremost thanking all of the police officers that are here tonight that showed up and had to deal with the protesters. So if we just give a round of applause.
so nice to be here. California never fails to disappoint. Amazing chapter leaders that make this possible. It's amazing, you know, I see all these people out there. It's almost like they're looking for a reason to protest. It's as if they find value in opposing something. I don't even think they know what they're opposing. You know, they're, oh, oppose white supremacy. I just kind of look at Candace and I'm like, that's good.
And of course, the fact that they're here tonight, when you think about what white supremacy really is, and to know that there are groups that have assembled and gangs that have assembled like Antifa that come to protest Black conservatives when they speak, when you know that you have CNN on their network vocally saying that Black people that disagree with Democratic policies are token Negroes and Uncle Toms. You know, to look at a Black person and think that you know what we believe, what we think, and how we view ourselves is the ultimate form to me of white supremacy. And because somebody has the same amount of melanin in their skin as me does not mean that we represent the same views. We all have different experiences in life. We've all been through different things. I certainly started my life as a liberal. I was clearly lost.
You're home, Candace. Welcome home.
So there's a lot of topics that we want to cover. This is obviously an incredibly sensitive time in this nation. First and foremost, so happy to see that Brett Kavanaugh did in fact get confirmed.
Trust this Brett Kavanaugh, and it's because Republicans fought for a change. I gotta say, in California here, you got two, my goodness, senators that kind of figure out which one was more unethical in the Senate hearing process. I think Dianne Feinstein actually I am Spartacus. I'm going to release information that will show Brett Kavanaugh is not a racist. But I'm Spartacus. Lindsey Graham was actually Spartacus.
Greatest memes ever, him walking and smiling and the protesters screaming behind him. I think that's so important. But that week, or the week leading up to it, just really troubled me. I have been probably one of the most vocal people in this nation against the Me Too movement, far beyond before the Brett Kavanaugh stuff came up. I knew the writing was on the wall when we start talking about removing due process. I saw it, honestly, back when Kesha made an allegation against Dr. Luke. Before I was at Turning Point, 2 years before I was at Turning Point, I wrote a whole article that was just said, what if Kesha's lying? You know, she had this allegation, there was no proof, she wanted out of her Sony contract, but because there was this image, for those that don't recall, of her crying in the back of a courtroom, the media went nuts. And they condemned Dr. Luke, and they said, you know, basically, he's guilty until proven innocent. It was a trial by the media, and there were so many celebrities backing it, and it went viral. And it was, to me, represented an increasing war that I have seen occur on men. There's without a doubt, a war happening right now in this country on men, on our sons, on our future husbands, on our current husbands, and on so many men that are now in the political realm. It becomes an easy target if you say that no matter what, you have to believe women. So one of my favorite things to do when you see these guys, you know, these liberal men, wearing...
We saw them at the University of Georgia.
Right, wearing these Believe Women shirts, the first thing I say to them is, okay, you sexually assaulted me. And then they sort of look at me and they say, well, I didn't sexually assault you. And I say,
no, I didn't.
If this is the threshold, if we're saying that there's no due process, you should just believe women, think about how scary that environment is for men that are coming up in the society. If you can say that a woman can fall out of amnesia 38 years later, 38 years later, nobody is safe. And it is so imperative, and I can't stress this enough, for all of the young ladies that are here tonight, that we stand up and vocalize our support for the men, because somebody has to do it.
Yes, thank you, Candace.
And the left is all about division and pursuit of power. So they're trying to divide people by race, trying to divide people by gender, they're trying to divide people by socioeconomic lines. And the Brett Kavanaugh debacle was just another example of that. was how can we use this as a wedge issue to try to stir up our base, to try to divide people. And, you know, I don't believe men, I don't believe women, I believe evidence, I believe facts. I mean, show me something that can be, at least give me a search warrant out of this, then I'll start to believe it. And what was so tribalistic about the Kavanaugh hearing on the side of the left is that we inherently must believe someone because of their gender. And as Candace reminded me, of course, women never lie. That's, of course, correct. And there was a person, Candace, the Emmett Till story or something in the 19th?
Which is correct, and this is what happens when you wipe away history, and it was astonishing to me that there was this emphasis placed in the Black community to speak up and to speak out against it, you know? The Black community, we should always have liberals' backs, and they wanted us to be the most vocal supporters of Christine Blasey Ford. And I said, wait a minute, it wasn't too long ago in the civil rights era where white women that were just believed without any facts were the reason why so many of my ancestors were lynched. And that's a really important thing to remember. And we don't. Because what's carefully happened, especially in the education system, is that history is sort of just glossed over and it's repurposed. And lately, everything that you are seeing coming out of the school systems, the education system, is left-leaning and liberal. And we're reaching a really dangerous point in our society when two conservatives can't come and speak about conservative principles without, of course,
Amen.
Make no mistake. If the administration got their way, they would not want this event to happen at all. The left hates the idea that there are other ideas. And the activists out there, I don't know who's paying them, I don't know who's behind it, you can draw your own conclusions. They want to make it intentionally expensive and intentionally difficult to bring Candace and myself on campus. They do not represent a majority of this campus. They don't even represent 5% of the campus. There's maybe 50 of them. I don't even know if all 50 of them go to school here. They're probably from the local area. I don't even know if all 50 of them have jobs. I would be amazed to find out if they actually. This is a tactic used by the left to make it seem as if Candace and myself are these wildly controversial figures, when in reality we talk about American exceptionalism, free enterprise, and the Constitution. And it really saddens me, and we were getting hundreds of messages like this. Oh, we got turned away from the event. We wish we could have come. How many times did we try to get a bigger venue here at the administration? They said no, 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 no. Every seat is filled. And for those administrators and the university leftists that say that there's no place for conservative ideas, if our ideas were so unpopular, why are we filling up auditoriums across the country with waiting lists? People
let's pivot here and discuss why. What is it that the left is so afraid of? Why do they feel like they need to censor us? Why do they feel like Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk should not be heard on campus? Why do they feel the need to dig up these movements that are rooted in victimhood because they want to assert control and to have power, like the Me Too movement, like the Black Lives Matter movement? What is this really about? And I'd like to be optimistic and assume that it's because we're really close in cracking the culture war. The left has had a stranglehold on culture for a very long time. And I talked about this, obviously, in terms of me having my awakening as a Black American and realizing that everything that I had learned throughout my life was a lie. That's a tremendous thing to realize. It's very hard. It's emotional. I suffered through cognitive dissonance for about a year, just realizing that everything that I thought wasn't. I thought up was down and down was now up, and I thought Republicans were racist and had it out for me and for Black Americans didn't want progress. I thought Democrats had saved us at every point in Black history, and that was all fictitious and false. And I realized that how were they able to brainwash me? That was the question I asked myself. How was the left able to brainwash me? I consider myself a pretty smart girl, well-read. Perhaps that's the problem. Reading all of the materials that you've been given in school. And I realized that they were really strategic in what they did, particularly to Black Americans in the 1960s. LBJ and his Great Society Act proliferated the welfare state. And what that did was it successfully broke down the Black family. For those of you guys that don't know, in the 1960s, the single motherhood rate in the Black community was at 23%. Today, single motherhood rate is at 74% in the Black community. So they removed Black fathers from the home strategically because they knew that if you could break down the family, you could really get to somebody. You could break down the mentality of somebody. So they went with that, and they knew that if the Black youth no longer had fathers and had a stable home life to look up to, who were they going to turn to tell them what was right and what was wrong? And the answer, of course, is media and culture. Jay-Z and Beyonce became the figureheads of our thoughts. What was coming on our hip-hop music is what we believe to be true or false, which is why Hillary Clinton, when she ran for election, I'm sure she has never listened to a Jay-Z album in her life. But she sure had him performing for her with an I'm With Her t-shirt. You know, I'm sure she didn't even know what station Power 105 was, but she did sit there and offer when they asked her what's one thing that she always has in her bag, and she said hot sauce, which is so unbelievably insulting, right? I mean, just like...
And they called her out and said, are you pandering? And she said, is it working?
Yeah.
You don't know the video yourself.
Right. So a tremendous gift came in the form, and I didn't know how we were going to tackle that verdict. I didn't know how we were going to reverse the effects on culture and Hollywood and the media, the stranglehold that leftists had, and then a tremendous gift, of course, came in the form of Kanye West.
Yeah! Yeezy! Woo! The Yeezy effect.
For those of you that don't know, it's okay, I didn't know until recently. These are Yeezys.
What? They are? Those are
How
Yeezys?
do you Charlie?
I actually know some lyrics.
I like Yeezy.
We won't say the dorky reason why you have them, because we were with Kanye after his
These are, we
meeting.
did say what they are.
He had on such nerdy shoes that Kanye was like, hey, can I give you some sneakers?
They were actually his, so these are his.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are sick.
You feel the dragon energy.
Yeah.
But Candace is one of the first people that probably the only person that within a span of a week could sit down and hang out with Kanye West and then sit down and hang out with the President of the United States in the Oval Office, where you can crack the political side, crack the culture side, and bring them together. Republicans, in the words of Candace, so accurately kind of put their nose up to culture for so long. Oh, we're just going to win on better graphs and charts, so on and so forth. When in reality, all that is true, but you can actually communicate to a large swath of the population that is not going to care about macroeconomic policy, but instead is going to listen to rap music. And you go to Kanye West's, Oval Office visit. There was more wisdom shared in 10 minutes of him talking than Barack Obama said in 8 years of being president of the United States. He said, not all black people have to be Democrats. We have a right to bear arms. Why don't we make things here in America? Freedom is important. I liked when he said we need to have the flyest stuff for our president. I was like, yeah, I agree with that. But in reality, the amount of courage it took for Kanye West to do that, and the blowback that he received from the left is so evident with how they treat black conservatives. The left does not view black conservatives as black people as soon as they become conservatives. If you don't believe me, just look at their treatment of Clarence Thomas, who's not in the African American History Museum, or Condoleezza Rice, or Thomas Sowell, or Dr. Ben Carson, or Candace Owens. But it gets a lot harder for them to, and I hate to use this term, but this is their term, to tokenize people when there's hundreds and hundreds of them. And thanks to the leadership of Candace Owens, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of this very week, we will have 400 plus black conservatives going to the White House in the East Room for our Black Leadership Summit to meet with the President of the United States.
Woo! Yeah!
I call it the Tatum effect. For those of you guys that follow Brandon Tatum, he's now our Director of Urban Engagement at Turning Point USA. And Brandon had a very interesting conversion story. Brandon thought, like most of us, that Republicans are racist, and he did not support the president when he was running. He was actually a Bernie supporter. And he was working on a police force at the time in Arizona, and somebody said to him, hey, why don't you just come to a Trump rally? Something that simple. And because Brandon is not ignorant, he said, okay, sure, I'll come. I don't support this man whatsoever. I think he's this, I think he's that, but I will show up to this rally. When Brandon got to the rally, he was amazed at what he actually saw, what he observed, not what was coming through the screen of CNN, not the interpretation of what happened, but what actually happened. He saw protesters that were vitriolic and that were hateful, that were on the left, that were causing so many issues on the outside. When he was inside, he saw a very calm venue, a president that was very, a to-be president that was very likable and calm and talking about issues that were really important. And then something even more interesting happened. Brendan went home, and CNN, MSNBC, and NBC, of course, all lied about what happened and what took place in that venue. And that was his aha moment, actually going to the event. So we wanted to recreate that wheel and continue to bring people that normally don't agree with you or don't believe in the stance that you believe to the ideas, because you can't unsee it. That's the thing. Once you see Trump speak and you see what happens, you see the way the media lies about everything that he says and what his intentions are, you can't unsee it. I think that that's something that every single person in this room can do to try to help. You know, you have that one friend that doesn't agree with you. You've got plenty of friends that don't agree with you. Perhaps Professor, I don't recommend inviting them to a Trump rally. But that is something that I think is really unique. Just say, hey, I know you don't agree with me, but I'd like to invite you to a Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk event or to a rally, and let them actually see what happens versus what's being interpreted on the outside of it.
Let me do something really quick. I'm moved to do this because I'm just looking around the room. So outside they say this is a white supremacist, racist organization. Raise your hand if you're a minority, a non-white American. Look at that. It's pretty hard to call this what they have. Where, you know, CNN and all these media elites, they make it seem as if, you know, we're only communicating to one portion of the electorate. Well, they're losing and we're winning because we actually embrace the idea of e pluribus unum, out of many one. The idea that it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter where you came from, it doesn't matter your religious persuasion. The idea of being an American, in fact, America is the only major country in the world where your identity as an American has nothing to do with your skin color, has nothing to do with where you came from, has nothing to do with how you look. For an ethnic Chinese, to be Chinese, you have to be ethnically Chinese. To be Japanese, you have to be ethnically Japanese. To be German, so on and so forth. To be an American, you have to have really a belief in one major idea, that a meritocracy, essentially that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can succeed. If you believe that, and you're legally, then you're an American. It doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what you look like. And it seems that the left wants to destroy that. It seems that, as many universities are doing, such as here in California, they're putting forth black-only dormitories. Or at Harvard University, they have black-only graduation ceremonies.
It's amazing how they've managed to repackage segregation as something that's empowering.
Make segregation cool again.
Right. It's bonkers to me. I read the headlines and I just think, oh my goodness, our ancestors must be rolling over in their graves thinking about what they fought for in this country, and now they're electing. This is self-imposed segregation, and that's what the left does. It really repackages racism as something that's empowering.
Do you agree?
Oh, without a doubt, and almost everything they do comes from a subtext. And what I always laugh at is, you know, there's white liberals that go up to Candace and say, Candace, you're a disgrace to your people. What? We live in Beverly Hills, like, shut up. You're a limousine liberal, like, no, she's actually a victor, not a victim. What do you want her, just to walk around and say, give me more free government stuff? Candace Owens is a living embodiment of everything the left hates.
Woo! Yeah! Candace! Love you, Candace!
And she said, I used to be lost, and now I have direction. The left hates someone with self-confidence that used to be a liberal, especially a black woman, because she breaks all the rules. Now, they really hate me because I'm at the top of the oppressor-oppressed pyramid. So seriously. And so you're looking at the thing that, the manifestation of everything wrong with Western society. White, and I hate that because I had so much to do with the selection of my skin color. Heterosexual, Christian, male, grew up in the suburbs, tall, I got tall, I height privilege, I got that. Seriously, it's a thing. Have you heard this yet?
Yeah.
Height privilege.
Height privilege.
By the way, how many of you are taught about white privilege, or in some sense? How many of you have had white privilege seminars or walks or heard about it almost every hench?
Just crazy when you think about the people that are screaming the loudest about white privilege. This is why they really hated Brett Kavanaugh, because he embodied all of those traits that Charlie was talking about. And then you look at who's on the outside trying to bang down the doors. You've got Amy Okay. Holding a black power symbol.
Oh my God.
Miss DeCliff turns around and asks the officer to arrest her. She asks the officer to arrest her. I mean, how privileged do you have to be that an arrest is so meaningless to you on your record that you're just like, hey, you can arrest me, it's fine, my lawyers take care of it. I mean, they embody the privilege that they accuse other people of having. And it's fascinating to me, and they don't realize that or recognize it.
Well, and so through every program that the left is pushing, both nationally, statewide, and locally, and especially at the university, the left comes from a racist pretext. And Candace can be the one, to reinforce this, whether it be affirmative action. Affirmative action is racism against Asian Americans.
It's also simple. Black people, you're too stupid to get in on your own merits, so let me try to help you to get in. No, we are not too stupid to get in on our own merits. We don't need affirmative action. We need people to work hard and get good grades and get into the colleges that they deserve to be in.
And they are so focused on skin color in every single sense that I would be amazed to think what the left would do if they didn't have race to continue to bring up. And there was somebody that I was on a panel with the other day by the name of Bakari Sellers, who said the quote that Candace said earlier. I'm not going to say it, but she said it.
Kanye West is what happens when Negroes don't read. He said that on CNN.
He said that on CNN. Still has his job.
Still has his job.
Okay.
They're all cracking up.
They're all laughing, by the way.
Calling him a token Negro. This is really exceptional television.
And so they're trying to ostracize and tokenize, for lack of a better term, Kanye West. And then I was on the panel with him, and Bakari turns and he says, Charlie, we've never in the history of our country had a real conversation about race. And I thought to myself, well, we did have the civil rights movement. Minor chapter in American history. We did have Martin Luther King, and we passed the Civil Rights Act. But since then, you've seen certain parts of the population do quite well, and certain parts do not well. And I asked him off stage, I said, do you think America's more racist today or less racist today than it was in the 1960s? He said negligible. And no one with any sort of objective analysis of the facts could possibly believe that. And it hit me there in the strongest moment imaginable. They need this as an issue. As soon as we start to get along, as soon as people stop looking at skin color, the left's political power diminishes totally.
Yeah.
They need people to hate each other.
Yeah.
They want riots. That's what the left wants.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of saying that I enjoyed this just a little bit. My favorite is the white-on-white guilt thing that's going on. I look at it and I'm like, wait, so you're a white person who hates white people because white people don't hate being white people. Is that correct? Is that what's going on with white guilt?
And so I have these, and I love it. So I call them the Frappuccino sipping, pumpkin spice latte ordering, Uber ordering, capitalist enjoying socialists. First of all, they begin the conversation with, the future is not binary. Great, thanks. There's only two genders, but now that you brought that up, we'll go back to what we're actually talking about. And they're trying to tell me, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Well, it depends what you're talking about. For being who you are. No, I'm actually quite happy. For being a white, privileged male and all the horror you do on society.
Right there is the adrenaline rush, because they get high from this. They get high by looking at other
virtue signaling. I'm a better person.
Right, I'm a better person than you are because I understand the plight of black people and I understand the plight of
yeah. That's so true. I battle people like that shit all the time on the internet.
Right.
Racist Republican.
And here's the thing. What they're suffering from is, again, another form of supremacy, because they're suffering from a white savior complex. It makes them feel good in the same way that it made me feel good when I rescued my kid, right? Like, here's this thing that's sort of pathetic and I'm going to rescue it. It's not true altruism. Of course it's not true altruism. It makes them feel good to feel like black people and Hispanic people and all of these other groups need them. There's nothing true about it. It makes them feel good because they can look at their peers and say, I'm better than you because I rescued this black person in a conversation today. Let me tell you something. I do not need rescuing. I am not a victim that belongs to white liberals. I don't understand why that fact upsets them so much.
Well, and Candace, correct me if I'm wrong, show me the continuation, the ideological continuation from how the Democrats have actually never changed since the 1860s. Now remember, the Republican Party was founded as the party of freedom and the party of anti-slavery. And if I had to point to one myth, if I could have a magic wand, to use a term from Barack Obama, a magic wand where I could deprogram one thing that the American youth have been taught that I think is the biggest barrier to entry for the persuasion to get young people, Republican, conservative, or independent, or libertarian, whatever you want to call it, it's the idea that somehow the party switched. I think that is probably one of the most corrosive, misrepresented elements of American history. Would you agree with that, more or less?
Yeah!
So repeatedly, so incorrectly, and yet so authoritatively to our youth that, well, the Republicans used to be the good guys, and then around the 1960s, they switched seats, and they became the bad guys. And then the Democrats became the saviors. When in reality, the ideological continuity is quite simple. The Democrats have always been about control, whether it be control of the plantations or control of the mine. And Lyndon Baines Johnson realized, who opposed the Civil Rights Act, by the way, he bitterly opposed it and was forced to sign the Civil Rights Act, which was championed by Republicans through Congress, not through Democrats. He realized that Black America needed to still continue to be controlled. Yeah. And how did he do that, Candace?
He enslaved minds. That's exactly what he did. He enslaved minds. And he did that very simply. And I think one of the biggest hurdles that we face is that the education system was handed over to the left. So that is the uphill battle that we face. You know, you finish your high school education in a public school system like I did, and you have a very skewed version of history. And it's a history that teaches you that you believe in freedom and you believe in rights, then you should be voting Democrat for the rest of your life. And that's sad. It's a steep hill to climb, but I believe that we're finally climbing it because what we are proving is that there is nothing more hypocritical than a leftist. I mean, we could talk about all day about the things that they have been hypocritical on.
Well, so they hate guns, yet they walk around with armed guards. They hate school choice, yet they send their kids to private schools. They hate walls,
Live behind gated
yet they live behind gated communities. And they say, oh yeah, we want to help everybody, and yet I'm wondering how many of these liberals in Beverly Hills are going to take someone in from the caravan if they actually come to this country.
Yeah.
Like, anywhere but my neighborhood, not around here.
You know, they hate when children are separated at the border from their families, but they quite literally incentivize that in the Black community. They incentivize that via the welfare system. Okay, you are given more money. If you are a family on welfare, you are given more money. If the father does not live in the home, the government will give you more money. They come by and they inspect your apartment to make sure the father does not live inside of the home. They incentivize the separation. And yet you want me to cry about the illegals that are at the border when they're separated for 5 minutes because their parent committed a crime. So this is what is really hard to wrap my head around. It's hard to wrap my head around how people don't see through the hypocrisy. But I think they're beginning to see through the hypocrisy. I think there are more conservatives and more Republicans today than there ever were. And again, for the first time ever, we are starting to see the spread of that ideology in the communities that need it the most.
Well, and so this is the huge point, is that we as conservatives will never go out of our way to try to prevent a liberal to speak on a college campus, will we? Do conservatives riot out there and say, stop, you know, whatever communist is coming to campus? It's a daily thing. It's probably a daily thing around here. No, we say, okay, it's a bad idea. I might show up, I'll listen, I'll ask him for a question, and then I'll tweet about it after. Like, great, okay. The left, they are so threatened by the idea that there are other ideas. Now, why? It's because they know when there's a marketplace of ideas, they lose.
Yeah.
Right.
That auditoriums fill up, that movements are created, that people like Donald Trump win elections. That's why they're chasing congressmen out of restaurants. That's why they're following senators through airports. That's why they kicked us out of restaurants. Because they have lost the battle of ideas. They have lost every time a debate or dialogue or discussion with the leftists, they'll go into an ad hominem personal attack. Any of you experienced this once or twice or 500 times a week? Where you're called a racist, a bigot. How many of you have been called a racist by a leftist? And yeah, recently, of course.
How many are minorities?
Everybody.
Isn't that amazing? White supremacists. It's so weird.
And the logic is so twisted, but here's the good news. Is that Candace and I are touring the country, and we can't find spaces big enough to host these events. Is that there is such an undercurrent of interest and enthusiasm for the ideas of freedom, American exceptionalism, the Constitution, and being a victor and not a victim. Candace, talk about that really quick, the difference between being a victim and a victor.
You know, it's pretty self-evidentiary, is what the left wants you to believe is it sells you this idea that there's always something, there's someone else that you can blame externally. And I experienced this before I even considered myself to be even looking at politics or caring about politics, and I was just sort of this scrub college kid. I was forced to take Feminism 101, of course, you know, it was a prerequisite.
Wow.
And I hated this teacher, and it was really bizarre to me. At this point, I thought I was a liberal, and what she pretty much wanted us to learn in class was that no matter what she said, it was going to be something really awful. The answer for why it was happening was because of men. So you could insert anything. Hey, Candace, why did you, lose your car keys this morning? Because men. Patriarchy. And this class went on and on, and it was so bizarre to me. And there's one class in particular that stood out to me where we were talking about eating disorders. And the professor, again, in the book had us look, and the statistic at the time was 89% of people that suffer from eating disorders are women. Why? Of course, the answer. Because men make us feel like we have to be skinny. And I remember laughing out loud, and my professor turned around to me and she says, "Oh, do you have a comment to make?" And I said, "This is a little ridiculous. I mean, first and foremost, I have never in my entire life had a man call me fat. That's exclusively a girl on girl crime. You know what I mean?" And she said, "I don't know how you can disagree with this, it's pointedly evident." And I said, "Well, what about, I'd like to see the statistics of how many people are doing steroid shots. I bet it's like 89% guys. Is it because we're oppressing them?" And then she said, "Oh my God, you sent me from the men's department." I said, "No, this is a little bit of common sense." And I said, especially for me, it's common sense because, and at this time in my life, I was 19 years old. I was actually in the moment suffering from an eating disorder. I suffered from anorexia, which you guys may have heard me talk about when I was in my teenage years. And she grew very quiet, and I said, "You are quite literally right now trying to tell me that my anorexia is because of men," and it's not. It's because I'm trying to assert control over my life. It was because of some circumstances that happened to me in high school. It's because of having a really rough family life. It is certainly not because of any man. And in that moment, I realized something. I realized that is probably the earliest indication that I wasn't going to be a liberal. Because I was in that moment taking responsibility for something that I had done to me. Candace Owens caused her eating disorder, not men, right? And she was insisting that if you believe that,
woo! Yeah!
Let's continue that logic, Candace. So when you program people to blame the external, you get really good at it. No matter what it is, car accident, waking up late, not getting a good job, it's the boss's fault, it's the racist society, it's homophobia, whatever. Okay. When people are programmed to think like victims, it's very easy to sell them entitlement programs. Because you think you're entitled to something because you're so oppressed. Your whole existence is being oppressed. Like, I walk up, walk around, I'm such a victim, I deserve somebody else's money. Think about it. I deserve somebody else's time or treasure. I deserve free education. That sounds familiar. I deserve free healthcare. Because when you program the victimhood mentality from a young age, of which Candace resisted as a free-thinking, independent woman, then all of a sudden it becomes very easy to program that population to become future Democrats, which is exactly what the left wants to do. It's easier to sell free education and free healthcare to an entire generation that thinks they're victims instead of victors. If they think they're victors, they say, "Well, no, I'll work my way out of it, I'll get a better job, I'll wake up earlier, I'll sit up straight. I was kind of a bum for a couple of years of my life, and this whole free, I actually don't deserve free anything, I've actually made some mistakes. Yeah. And I'm going to improve them, I'm going to live a fruitful life." The left doesn't want that, and I can show you some evidence of that. Since Donald Trump has taken office, 3.9 million people have gone off food stamps in the labor force. 3.9 million people have gone off the food stamps. If I would say that to a Democrat audience, they would look at me and they would hiss. Because for them, that's not success. For them,
success is measured by how big they can grow the government. How dependent an individual can become on the government. For them, the government really represents a God. They want the government to be God in people's lives. And we talk about that in the context of why it is that they're constantly mocking Jesus Christ and God and religion and Vice President Mike Pence for respecting his wife. What a bizarre thing that they're mocking. They're trying to demonize religion because in many ways they want the government to become the religion in everybody's life. They want you to report to government when you have a problem and to nobody else.
And as we say, and Dennis Prager says, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And so the distinction will be very clear for our generation. We're either going to embrace a society that will be individuals taking responsibility for their lives, being charitable to each other, relying on churches and local communities, first and foremost, to help the poor and the needy and the disadvantaged, or we're going to create a society that is really rooted in Marxist philosophy, where increasingly secular, government takes care of everything. Charity doesn't mean anything. You want to see what that will look like? Go to France. Go to Spain. They have unbelievably high unemployment, first and foremost. Taxes upward of 60 to 70%. Healthcare with waiting lines out the door. But even more concerning than that, the church-going rates have been down almost 60 to 70% over the last 20, 30 years. And you ask a European, well, how much money do you give to charity? And they'll look at you, they say, charity? Well, what is that? Government takes care of that stuff for me. The least charitable countries in Europe are the ones that have expanded government dramatically over the last 30, 40 years. Because as government expands, the individual decency and connection completely and totally erodes. And it's not that, and we get mislabeled as conservative, libertarian, free-thinking, independents, because you might be one of those things. We love all of you. As not wanting to help the poor. No. We think the best way to help the poor is to keep them off government programs. The best way to help the poor is to get them a job. The best entitlement program is a job.
Woo! Teach them how to fish.
Do goodwill things. If the government stays out of your life and out of your paycheck, and makes it easier for you to do goodwill things. We believe in the individual. We do not believe in the expansion of government.
And so here's a provocative thought. There's a lot of
wages.
rich people bashing that happens in our society.
I love rich people.
I do too. I love rich people. Has anyone ever gotten a job from a poor person? In order to get rich in a free market system versus a socialist system, that's a contrast then. In order to get really rich in a free market system, you could be a horrible human being. You could be a liar, a cheater, a thief. But you have to still play by some parameters. You have to create value. You have to employ probably a lot of people to get super rich, borrow money, and then you have to pay back that money, and you have to do it again next year, and then you have to come up with new ideas, and you have competitors. It's not easy. It's actually quite difficult. It's very difficult to get very, very rich. And actually, a free market requires you to act ethically. Because if you start lying and stealing and cheating with your customers, people will stop buying your products. Now, you can get away with it for a little bit. You can get away with it in a local community, but you try to grow that business outside of a couple zip codes, it's very, very difficult to be unethical across a lot of states because word gets out and lawsuits start to get filed and people stop buying your products and employees will quit. It almost requires virtue. Now, how do you get rich in a socialist country? Like Venezuela or Cuba? You become ruler. You become a politician. That's the ruling class in a socialist society because government controls everything. Government is the means of production. Government is God in that society. And so you juxtapose that, and people in society want to bash rich people, and if there's only one thing you remember I ever say, I remember this. Just because someone gets rich does not mean anybody got poor. Just because someone got rich does not mean anyone got poor. In order to get rich, you have to make other people rich as you get rich. When Howard Schultz started Starbucks, millions of people got rich because of Howard Schultz, from the people that sold the coffee beans, to the people that built the retail shops, to the people that used to transport the goods to the stores. Millions of people got richer because Howard Schultz got richer because he had a good idea that all of you, I bet, have bought a Starbucks product once in the last 5 years. It's impossible to get rich in a free market system without having a good idea, doing it repeatedly, and innovating throughout.
That's exactly right, and we believe that free markets is the best. It serves economic justice. You know, if you work hard, if you're willing to compete, if you get up every morning, and it's not easy, but if you do that, you will be rewarded. And that's what we're trying to protect in this society. And it's amazing to me, it's scary to see people walking around with shirts that are pro-socialism. I mean, we really have to develop a program to send these kids to the countries that weren't according to what they promote. Send them to Venezuela.
I think we should call it, Candace, we should do a TV show called Utopia. You know what? I bet we'd have some takers outside. I think that we should, Turning Point USA should do it. We could raise some capital. All expense paid, we have to film every second of it. You go live in a Venezuelan village, no Wi-Fi, no toilet paper, no food, brink of the Civil War, 4,000% inflation, 42% unemployment. Utopia.
Average citizen has lost 30 pounds, right? Utopia. I mean, it's really scary to think about what's going on in Venezuela and think that this is being taught as something that's utopian and great and can happen in this society. People wanted to turn America into Venezuela, and that's almost because we're so uneducated. Most of the people that I speak to that believe in this have not traveled outside the United States. So they really do believe that the world is according to their textbook. The world happens according to what the professors tell them. They don't get out and they don't travel, and that's the problem. It's because I am so well-traveled that I want to protect the American dream. I want to protect the idea that you can come to this country with the clothes on your back and make something of yourself if you have a good idea.
Candace and I talk about, do not vote for what you fled from. Whether it be the Cubans, the Venezuelans, the Colombians, Koreans, the Vietnamese, America has benefited from free-thinking individuals over the last 50 years that fled socialist communist ideas. And now the kids and grandkids of those refugees are now marching in the streets for the very same ideas that their grandparents fled. That a know-nothing, self-serving politician such as Bernie Sanders is literally exploiting a generation that wants to make the world, quote-unquote, a better place that has been taught victimhood their entire life. And I ask the question, how much more evidence do we need before we come to the consensus and the conclusion that Marxism won't work? I mean, this is a genuine and sincere question. If there's a leftist in the room at some point, please go up to the microphone and tell me what level of evidence would be suitable.
We tried 100 million people that it killed in the last 100 years.
Minor detail.
Right. That's the only evidence they have.
We've tried it in every continent. Every continent. How many times have we tried it? Over 100 times. We've tried it in every sort of region. I remember the Marxists used to argue, this was a great argument in the 1950s, well, the reason why we were doing a great example is that we need to contain it so we can test it. So they thought Cuba would be a great test example of that. That worked brilliantly. You know, where the medical care is a disaster. They're still driving 1950 Chevys and a repressive government and so on and so forth. If you want to screw up a prosperous country, implement socialist ideas. And Venezuela is the common talking point, but another country you should look closely at is Argentina. Argentina was a prosperous free market economy throughout the 1990s and 2000s. They elected around 2008. They used to be the #1 exporter of grass-fed beef in the world. Now they're like 210th because some Marxist dictator essentially said, well, we want to keep all that beef for our citizens. Well, Argentina didn't have the purchasing power to maintain that sort of industry, of course, so it collapsed to the roof. Argentinian bonds are just right next to Venezuelan bonds. It's the second worst economy in South America. Test case after test case, Marxism and socialism ruin civilizations and ruins cultures. And juxtapose that Candace with free market capitalism.
You know, speaking of fleeing countries and speaking of South America, I'd just like to take a second to discuss this, I guess, perfectly timed caravan of illegals. Really, it's an interesting time that they have, right? And some serious coordination that's coming here. I really would be in support of any person that wanted to offer them money to come forward and say who organized this, because I mean this has the left all over this. This really is right before midterms. They're literally supposed to arrive on midterm day. I mean, it's unbelievable, the things that they come up with, the things that they will do, and things that they will fund to try to destroy this country and to try to interrupt Trump's administration.
Well, I love Trump is the best political messenger, I think, in political history. Seriously, there's no one like him.
Yeah! Trump! Woo!
I think they got 240 million people at this rally. It was unbelievable. And he goes and says, this midterm, it's It's going to be about Kavanaugh, the caravan, and mobs. You want to have mobs?
That was funny.
So Candace and I could go on all night, but the real reason we're here is to take an extended amount of questions and to have conversations. You can always look up what we feel on a variety of issues and see our usual spiel, but we do want to be able to interact directly. So our first rule is it has to be a question, not a statement with an upward inflection, where you tell us what you feel, then you ask us what we think of that, so actually make it a question. And then we want people that disagree. You have a pass to cut to the front of the line, always and completely the entire night.
Sure, because we like to get to as many questions as
So
possible.
please start forming the line for some questions, but disagreements get precedence, and that's why we're here. And I love my MAGA hats. I love them. Come on up. The Reagan Bush shirt. I'm sure we're going to disagree on a lot.
You gonna ask anything?
Candace and Charlie, I just want to, it's like really cool to be here. Candace, since I saw your interview on Rubin Report a long time ago, I've been following you on Twitter. And so just a little bit of background, I'm a convert like you. I grew up here in Southern California, a gay kid in Southern California, so I got the message, you know, Republicans and so on and so forth, and college pushed me further right. And lately, your Victor Not Victim has been my go-to because I'm just so angry with the gay left now. And I'm wondering, how do I bring this message to the gay community? How do I be you for the gay community?
Oh man. So I think that what I always tell people is that you have the resources to. We no longer rely on the media to tell us what's right and what's wrong. I got started on YouTube. I mean, it seems crazy that just a year and 2 months ago I uploaded my first video, and look at how much of a journey it's been. So first off, there's a huge network actually now of really bold gay conservatives that I follow on Instagram and on Twitter. So I would say link up. You're definitely, I hate to say stronger together, but stronger. There's another way to say that. Yeah. More of you is better. And to figure out what your niche is. Like, are you a YouTuber? Do you like to make videos? Are you really good at just doing memes? Is there meme accounts? And just realize that there's so much power in social media. Create the following and create the community there.
Well, and I just have to say, I am so sick of Republicans and conservatives being labeled as anti-gay. So sick of this. I don't know how much more effort we have to show and make to the general culture at wide that, you know, our movement is strong when every individual is a member of that movement. And you look at into the 2016 election, commonly known fact, the first and only president in American history to enter office supporting gay marriage was Donald Trump. Not Barack Obama. Barack Obama entering office in 2008 was adamantly opposed to gay marriage. Then he realized that it was politically okay to be open for gay marriage, and in 2011 he changed his opinion completely. And so we need to have more voices such as yours, but it is a cheap tactic of the left to try to continue to smear conservatives and Republicans as being, you know, anti-LGBT.
And I always talk about the fact that LGBT, those letters are even together, makes no sense. It's them trying to conflate issues and trying to create a collectivist hive mindset. It drives me insane. What does a man being attracted to a man have anything to do with a man that thinks he's a woman? You know, a woman. I mean, it's bizarre to me, and they do that for a reason, because when they say it's one for all and all for one, right? So if you have disagreement about the trans bathroom, you're not allowed to do that as a gay person. You can say, hey, I don't really care about that, and it creates that mob mentality. You have to defend us, we defend you. So I would love to see someone really push on that and break apart that collectivist attitude that they've sort of built on the left.
Well,
it's a major area of problem.
From a purely statistical standpoint, you know, at Turning Point USA, we're very proud. We have many members in our senior leadership that are members of the gay and lesbian community. But I talk to them, and the issues that matter predominantly outside of the particular issue of gay marriage, which is settled law, the gay community, if you actually look at it, if you isolate it, actually has much higher income earning potential than some members members in certain states of, I guess you could say, the heterosexual community. They are also very reliant on adoption, so you would think it would be a pro-life community. Venture a guess there, I could be totally, completely wrong.
Actually be completely wrong.
Okay.
Famously, here at Long Beach Pride about 2 years ago, Planned Parenthood was marching down the street and I got wretched on the side of the road.
Well, so I don't think that makes logical sense, but so if that's, I guess it's an intersectionality case then. But I think that moving forward, there's no reason why the Democrats should have a complete and total monopoly on the gay community's votes or support. I see no reason for that whatsoever. So, thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Agreements you can come to, but we want disagreements, so it's over here.
Hello. I want to start off first by saying, Charlie, I don't appreciate your height privilege at all, standing in front of your pride.
I'll try to work on my height.
Very triggering. So I'm part of the club on campus here. I love the motto, sitting in front of a big government sucks. My question kind of addresses that because I know we're a diverse group and I love the intellectual diversity, the real diversity of our club and the entire organization. But to me personally, I was just wondering where you stand on it. Where is the line? Where is government needed? To what extent can the free market or whatever other societal forces regulate society itself? You know, like the best example I like personally is when it comes to the N-word, how obviously there's no law, you know, against saying the N-word for white people or anybody really, but nobody really does it, right? So my question is, why can't society and market forces dictate all, like most or all even of, you know, society's values and how we operate as individuals?
So what are you saying is if, like, why can't we do it without government altogether? Is that the question? Just to streamline it?
Well, or just, I was just curious, like, where both of you stand on it.
Well, I mean, I try to take a historical look at things. So here's when the government was really good. After the Civil War, when things were sort of in disarray, and we had, you know, people like Vanderbilt and John D. Rockefeller, and they stood up and they one who did oil, you had the trains, and they created monopolies. That was incredibly problematic. You know, John D. Rockefeller was buying out competition. There was no, in many ways, there wasn't really free markets because he owned the markets. And then we had that impactful case, the Standard Oil versus the United States, to break up that monopoly to allow competition to come in again. You know, the same can be said for Andrew Carnegie and Steel, all the stuff that happened in that same time frame, where because he owned a monopoly on that, he was setting how much workers were going to get paid, and they were making absolutely nothing, having to work 23-hour days. They were dying inside of the factories. That's when we need government. That's the limited government that comes in and says this isn't okay. So it was necessary for Standard Oil to be broken up because it became a monopoly, the same way that I am seeing a lot of evidence for me that I believe that there needs to be United States versus Google today. You know, Google in many ways represents a monopoly.
I'd say we're way out of bounds of what would be considered constitutional government. For example, growing up, we were taught that there are 3 branches of government. In reality, there are 4. And the 4th branch is actually more powerful than all 3 combined. And the 4th branch is the bureaucracies. It's the Department of Education, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health and Human Services, the IRS, the FTC, the FDIC. That's almost 3 million people strong of bureaucrats that do nothing but wake up every single day and try to make life more difficult for Americans, misappropriate money and try to justify their existence on the heartstrings of our citizens, when in reality, almost all of that, in essence, should not exist on a federal level and should be brought back to the states. And so you have to remember that the states and sending money to DC is not going to solve the problem. In fact, the more you hyper-localize things, the more solutions you're going to find, because there's more accountability and there's more transparency in the allocation of those resources. A great example is this. So the Veterans Administration. We spend $180 billion a year to try to help our vets, but over 50% of that money will never go to any sort of administration of healthcare. It's just people in the back office shuffling papers around. It's to pay for bureaucrats to do absolutely nothing all day long. It's a complete total misallocation of resources. So you go to a hospital, a private hospital, their overhead will be between 5 and 8%, not 50%. And so we think we're helping our vets when we're increasing the federal budget there, but we're not. So I think we're way out of bounds there. But you know, the fourth branch of government is something that needs to be tackled. We can get into a much more routine, conservative, which I'm not going to do right now. But it's the argument should be more pragmatic with what government agencies and what government programs right now that you would cut or you would decentralize back to the states. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kimo Gandel. I'm the president of the College of Republicans at UCI. So my question is, you talk a lot about family values and things like that, especially emerging out of the 1960s in the African American communities. And these days too, you know, the government is propelling these policies like Sex Positivity Week. UCI will pass out sex toys paid by the taxpayer. And on the other side of that, on market forces, you have applications like Tinder that devalue the marketplace of sex to the point where, you know, these American institutions are no longer efficient. People who aren't taught that they're important, where males are only taught that sex is the thing to get out of a relationship. How do we counter that, especially since you don't have these family units? You basically breed leftists because now they're reliant on the state.
That's a great question. You're absolutely right. This culture, the leftist culture, certainly promotes promiscuity. You can see it all the way down to television. And I talk about specifically like what happened to black TV. When I was growing up, I was paying attention to the Huxtables and the Jeffersons and Sister and Smart Guy, and there were these, you know, family units, and they were doctors and they were lawyers, and now we've got like Love and Hip Hop. I mean, I love Cardi B. Don't get me wrong. You know, there's something to be said here that when you watch Love and Hip Hop, for those who haven't seen it, all they're doing is promoting promiscuity and being daddies. So I think what ends up is that we have to combat culture. Right, so and we're starting to see a little bit of that. When people start to follow, like there's something to be said for the fact that people are like excited at our student action at the end of the year when Dennis Prager, who's 70 years old, hits the stage and screaming like Owens has come back from the dead. The cultural battle is what we have to win. We have to make conservatism cool, right? And that's why I know that when Charlie first started turning for the USA, a lot of people said, oh no, and still you get some of those criticisms, big gov sucks, don't make it sound cool, you know, don't use hashtag culture. No, that's what we need to do. We need to sort of appeal to people and understand that when you're younger, things that sound faster and cooler are going to be things that you're naturally drawn to in general. That's just a part of being youthful. Understanding that dynamic and then trying to understand a pitch that works for them. And still teach the same values that we all believe in, I think, is where we're going to be able to start to make a difference.
And to piggyback off that, sometimes the government program you think that is going to help the people it's supposed to help ends up hurting. Best example of this is our welfare policy that was designed to allegedly help single mothers. Okay, that sounds good, but it's also a de-incentive to not get married, to stay single. Because if you get married, you lose the check. That's wrong. Black fathers matter. Black fathers will help save the epidemic.
Yeah!
Single parents are modern-day heroes, but they would have an exponentially easier time with a nuclear family that is kept intact. And
so I say one more thing, defeating radical feminism, okay, because that's what it is, feminism today.
Woo!
And they're naked walking down the street and saying, I'm allowed to do this because I'm, you know, this is women are allowed to do that. That radical feminism has caused and perpetuated so much of what we do out here today. I can't stand it. I could not be prouder to say, and I'm not a feminist.
Woo! Yeah! I love you, Candace.
All right, so my question is about white BLS. So I am going to white BLS. Usually when talking to other liberals, I'm new to Black Mike, so I talk to a lot of, I call them radical ethnic blacks, and they like to say things like...
Wait, I'm sorry, what's your YouTube?
The official Black Mike.
Oh, I'm in the Instagram chat with
politics. People say like, oh, stop playing identity politics. And I think there's a lot of people who don't understand the difference between what Turning Point is doing and what the left does with identity politics. And I just want to say for everyone in the room, like Turning Point is at the forefront of reaching Black people within the conservative movement. Identity politics. What's the difference when you're explaining to a Democrat or a liberal, and they say, "Oh, there are 400 Black kids in the White House. Like they're using all these tokens. You got so many tokens in one room. Like, what's the difference?"
So I know it's ridiculous, but first and foremost, we believe in identity. I mean, that's that identity politics separate from identity. There are conversations that need to be had in the Black community. Black people should be allowed to convene and talk about those conversations amongst each other and how we fix our communities and stop blaming people externally. To give them a great example, what I always say to them is that if a bunch of pregnant women want to show up to a class and talk about pregnancy issues, you have a problem with it? Is that identity politics? No. They're going through a unique set of circumstances that they can relate to one another and they can talk about that, which is allowed because we believe in identity, believe in things that you go through. You're allowed to be a pregnant person speaking to pregnant people without being accused of identity politics. It's more or less the same as that we do intentionally. You know, YWS is going to be an entirely different types of conversations that will be held than when we do our YWLS. You know, towards when we did YWLS this year, we wanted to talk about radical feminism. We wanted to address and say, here's what is happening in our society, and here's how we can help fix it. We don't stand on the platform and say, hey, and by the way, this is how you have to go because you're a woman, right? That's identity politics, saying, okay, now that you're here and you're Black, I'm going to tell you what you must think. That's what the left does. That's what the left does when they call us token Negroes. That's what the left does when they say that Black people cannot show up and support the president or have at least hear the president out, right? That's identity politics. What we're doing is destroying identity politics.
Yeah, and also to piggyback off that, think of it less as the left does in racial and more as cultural. And so there's a distinct Black culture in America.
Oh, for sure.
And if conservatives think that doesn't exist, I mean, join me this weekend and you'll figure it out really quick. And I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I don't have the same shared experiences or cultural background of Candace, Owens, or yourself, or Brandon Tatum. There's nothing wrong or correct about that, but when you have a commonality of people of similar culture that have been told their entire life that no one, in the way you look, you're not allowed to be a conservative, you bring 400 around them, that's not a token anymore, that's a movement. Big difference. And people try to, they try to do this cheap accusation against Turning Point. Well, Charlie, you abhor identity politics, which is true in essence. First of all, you have to sometimes use the tactics against them to get what you want, but there's a cultural side of this too. And if we think that, if we think that the left is going to lay down their arms and continue to isolate and say, oh, Kanye West is the only one. Like, okay, he's the only one? Then show us what's about to happen in the White House on Friday when President Trump addresses the largest ever conservative gathering of Black conservatives. Okay, CNN, you want to play that game?
Yeah.
That's really special and really unique, and conversations I don't think have perhaps ever been had in the Black community. I mean, really talking about Black fathers and Black men and how radical feminism even impacts that, trying to make you think if there's something wrong with masculinity, when in fact masculinity is what the society needs. They need fathers in the home to rear children. They need fathers in the home, to keep Black men, as we know, 20 times more likely to end up in prison and behind bars if you grow up without a father in the home. That is a unique discussion that needs to happen in a room filled with Black people. By the cameras are welcome, they can record it and it'll be broadcast, but I'm very excited for it, and I'm so blessed that you're going to be there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Disagreements are allowed to cut in line. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. So I don't really disagree with you guys, but I need some advice. So my breaking point, I grew up in a conservative home, but I was lost in high school because of learning about history. It really made me mad. But I started to realize that I didn't agree with everything with early feminism, and so I started looking into more stuff. And I really, when I was fully awake, I wanted to write about this kind of stuff in my high school newspaper. So I did. I wrote about 5 different articles, and they were all on the opinion page. And I knew that I was going to get not good backlash. And I wouldn't say I got direct harassment, but I did get indirect harassment. And I did lose friends, and there's people who used to be friendly with me who were no longer friendly with me, and it really made me sad, and it really made me insecure, and it made me not want to use my voice, and I can't sacrifice my voice for people who are going to truly be my friends. So I want to know, how do you guys deal with hate or backlash, or how do you like be secure in yourself with your voice?
So I'm going to talk about then, not now, because now my haters are my muse. I get up in the morning and I love the comments. I think there's a whole article about how he was sunk in place demons. I think I'm going to do that for Halloween. But it was hard when I was younger, and that period of insecurity that you're talking about is, it's unique. And it's difficult to go through because you sort of question yourself. Like, am I sane or am I crazy? Because everyone hates you to have this opinion, and they, of course, will accuse you of being aggressive, and they use those really negative terms to make you question yourself. But I think if I could go back and tell myself one thing, it would be what waits on the other side is so worth it. Like, that shedding of your friends, you're going to be like, thank goodness, and you don't even realize how much they're holding you back. Having that insecurity and second-guessing yourself is what's stopping you from taking a bigger leap into what you truly believe in. And when you fully release that negativity, when you sit in a room with a bunch of like-minded individuals and realize that you're not the only one, and go like balls to the wall, come to the events, right, and get in touch with other conservatives, you're going to be so empowered, and you're going to feel so great about the fact that you didn't let go of what you thought was right. And let me tell you something, you are right.
Yeah!
So good evening and welcome to the beach. I don't have a disagreement, I'm sorry. But
Okay, find one eventually.
yeah, we'll get there. I wanted to say thank you for bringing back Dina, because my mom and her family Chile in 1969, 1970 when the socialist government followed the identity into power down there. So thanks for that. But also, I wanted to ask about the word diversity, because the left, you see them on television and on the social media these days, and they have a monopoly on the word. They've essentially converted it to basically mean everything from skin color to sexual orientation, however you want to describe it. And how should we as conservatives try to get that? Because my father, he's Choctaw American Indian. My mother, like I said, is from Chile. And a lot of my leftist friends in high school, they looked down on me because I explained what I am. And they thought it was weird because I had a skin color a shade darker than my mother's. So how do we as conservatives get the word diversity back from the left and make it something more like politics and intellectual diversity, I mean?
Well, first of all, you're more Native American than Elizabeth Warren. So that's I don't even think she read her own DNA results. Some intern handed her, oh, we got evidence! We got evidence! Great, give it to the Boston Globe. Call 2 hours later. You're 1,024, maybe Central American, which might be Cherokee.
Just run with it. Just run with it.
Which actually goes to show that, I mean, I'm not going to
Can't turn back now.
Intellectual diversity. Look, the left wants everyone to look different but think the same. They want racial diversity, but they want ideological uniformity. Because the debate, discussion, ideas, and having differences of opinion, that's hard. That's actually where your boundaries are pushed. That's where you might have to hear something you disagree with, or you might have to understand that there's a set of facts or data that might make you reconsider a different opinion. So there's a overemphasis on college campuses about feelings. Feelings are completely and totally irrelevant to discussions about public policy. 3 people should care about feelings, maybe you, your mother, and a therapist. That's about it. I couldn't care less about how you feel about an issue. I care about how you think about an issue. And the lack of ideological diversity within the left is quite telling. Now, we as conservatives and libertarians, independents, we take pride in our own ideological diversity. We always joke around, at a Turning Point USA event, you'll have 2,000 people and you'll have 6,000 opinions about a certain issue. Because everyone can debate each side of it and they'll have a different mix and different tangents around it. And we as conservatives are individualists. They're collectivists. Therefore, they have identity in the mob. Our identity is in the individuality of ideas.
I agree.
follow. And Candace, I hope Ye features you on his next album, but next time he goes to the Oval Office, he has to bring you. Okay?
Yeah.
So my question is,
they call me Kelly and Kanye, by the way. You can always make sense of what he's saying on Fox News, and you're like, who is she? Kelly and Kanye? And I'm like,
so I'm conservative. One thing I have a hard time rationalizing to my liberal friends, and conservatives on TV and politicians have a hard time articulating, is intelligent reasons why the wall must be built. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
wow, that's so easy to articulate why the wall should be built, particularly versus just understanding the impact that illegal immigration has. The one group in American society that's impacted the most by illegal immigration and the most negatively is the Black community. They're being put out of jobs when they come in and they compete for these jobs below minimum wage. So that's if Trump says he'll pay a good salary, I'll go build a wall myself. And here's the thing, here's a great argument that you can always articulate, is that they're arguing saying that we should have no borders is because of diversity. They'll accuse you of racism and say have diversity if there is a wall. Well, the truth is that over 50% of this country's immigration, immigrants are coming in from, the illegal immigrants are coming from Mexico or coming from south of the border, right? That's not diversity, that's making America Mexico, which is ridiculous. If you want diversity, I always say to them, it's like, I'm pro-diversity, which is why I want the wall. I want some legal immigrants from Africa. We only take in 2 to 4% of immigrants a year from Africa, right? What about those people who are waiting in line, who are better positioned to have the merit to be into this country? They don't get a chance because you have people that are hopping the border. So I think that that's something you can always articulate, is telling them that, in fact, by not having the wall, you are not encouraging diversity in this country.
And 3 quick things. Number 1, I'm going to say some facts. I'm going to talk about fairness, then I'm going to talk about sovereignty. Some facts. An illegal alien in the state of Arizona is twice as likely to commit a crime versus an after-border citizen. Fact. 90% of all heroin and fentanyl come across the southern border. Fact. Over 10,000 kids are illegally sex trafficked across the southern border every single year. Fact. We have 56,000 illegal immigrants in our federal prison system. Fact. And countless in our state penitentiary system. $135 billion a year, that's how much is the financial burden on U.S. taxpayers every single year that illegal immigrants drain from our system. Fact. You put all that together, that's a pretty compelling argument that we have some problems with our southern border. So those are some facts. Number 2 is fairness. As Candace said, it is not fair to the people in Bolivia, it's not fair to the people in Bangladesh, and it's not fair to the people in Belarus that had to wait in line, fill out an application form, not commit a crime, and then wait a decade to come into this country to maybe have a chance to become an American. It's not fair to them. Number 3 is sovereignty. Why do walls matter? Why do borders matter? Borders are a physical representation of when good ideas begin and bad ideas start. If you don't believe me, just ask East and West Germany, right? North or South Korea. If you believe in open borders, you do not believe in the physical delineation of where good ideas start and bad ideas start. The wall right now is not only important for facts, not only important for the facts I mentioned, the fairness, but also the sovereignty. We are not Mexico. We have a unique culture. We have a unique identity. The Mexican culture is something that should be appreciated and understood, but our culture is much different and has outpaced them over the last 50 years. And to say that we should have open borders and we should have some sort of transferable citizenship cheapens the idea of the American identity and culture of the people that have waited in line and the tens of millions of immigrants that have to fly halfway across the world to come into this country. So those are the 3 reasons I would give: to build the wall, build it quickly, build it high, build it wide. The big doors so people can come in legally.
Yeah! Woo! Yeah!
Candace, my sister and I have been big fans of yours since the early YouTube days. And I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you for being such a great role model for her, she's 19 years old, in this city. And I have 2 questions for her. First is, how are you helping to increase your influence and messages on Asian Americans who don't have an opinion when it comes to politics?
Don't have an opinion. I wouldn't say that I've targeted the Asian American community whatsoever. I think it's highly important that there is focus. And to me, I think that a great injustice has been done in this country, particularly to African Americans, and I've been focused on that from the very beginning. I haven't, there's a lot of crossover if we talk about affirmative action and some of the things that are being done in this country in terms of people that are working the hardest, which are in fact Asian Americans, who are being penalized for their hard work. But I'm not focused on that issue, and I think that they're doing a pretty good job. They're suing Harvard, and as they should, and they should win. But African Americans have been in this country since 1619, and we seem to be doing the worst in almost every single regard, and that's the issue that I choose to focus on until I see this revolution against the Democrat Party.
And just to add one thing, my biggest focus of the Asian American community is to get rid of affirmative action. No Asian American voter should be okay with our current affirmative action policies. There are zero, I repeat, zero laws on the books that legally discriminate against Black Americans right now. We have laws on the books that legally discriminate against Asian American students. This is an outrage. This is racial segregation at its finest, and it's okay because Asian Americans have done well over the last 60 years because they studied, they kept their communities safe, they went to school, they got married before they had kids, they got jobs, and through intergenerational stratification, they become the richest subgroup by race in America, and all of a sudden that's okay to discriminate against them. It is pure and simple racism. I had a liberal tell me the other day, well, Charlie, what? You want an entire lecture hall at UC Berkeley be all Asians?
Why not?
Why not? What are you, racist against Asian Americans? If they're the smartest and the best in school, then that's fine. And so that I think affirmative action is the most important thing. And one other thing that Candace always talks about, we have two sample sets. We have the Black community and we have the Native American Indian community. These are the two poorest communities in America that also have the highest rates of government dependence that we've tried to help the most over the last 60 to 80 years, and they are the poorest, the most murderous areas in America are Native American reservations and urban communities with predominantly Black populations, because we try to help them through our broken welfare policies and government institutions. But you have a second question, so go ahead.
Yeah, she wants to make sure if I can get your autograph after all.
Oh, that's so sweet. Of course she can. That's really sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is one especially my constituents talk about. Turning Point seems to support President Trump's homeless policies. So, for instance, the president has talked specifically about funding Israel $3 million and has provided more military hardware to them. How can we both, oppose government coercion and taxation, and then also involve ourselves so stringently in all these foreign states?
Well, I mean, so first of all, Turning Point is agnostic on foreign policy. We're very happy about his deregulatory agenda and tax cuts. I'm very in support of his agenda, so I'll tell you what. Arab Muslims have 40+ states, and they seem to have a problem that the Jews have one. The world is a better place.
Yeah.
The world is a better place because Israel exists. It's the beacon of freedom in a sea of totalitarianism. What they will not teach you in university that it's the only state in the Middle East where it's okay to be gay. They want to throw you off a rooftop because you're a gay or lesbian individual. Famously, they asked Ahmadinejad, did you notice he stayed away from cameras recently because he'll say stuff like this in 60 Minutes. They said, Mr. Ahmadinejad, how do you treat gay people in your country, Iran? We do not have gay people in Iran. Mr. Ahmadinejad, your country of 180 million people. We do not have gay people. They don't exist. What he means is they kill them. When they find gay people in Saudi Arabia, they kill them. They find them in Iran, they throw them off rooftops. That's commonplace in Islamic theocratic fascist dictatorships in the Middle East. Israel has the highest growth rate of any country in the Middle East, most tolerant, most accepting, and the only place where all three religions are allowed to openly practice, openly visit their sites and monuments, and allowed to worship as they see fit. And by the way, it's the Muslims that are not allowing the Jews to go to their holy sites in Jerusalem. It's not the Jews that are not allowing the Muslims to go to their holy sites. But I'll say this, is that as far as the allocation of resources, I'll be looking at that $3 billion, wasn't aware of that, but I completely and totally support the defunding of the Palestinian Authority. U.S. taxpayers should not be funding proxy to Hamas. Quick story about Hamas. Israel gave up Gaza in pursuit of peace in year 2005. Gaza had factories, it had vineyards, it was fertile land. Almost instantaneously, the Palestinian Authority gave their keys over to Hamas, which is a terrorist state. They burned the factories, they burned the vineyards, they turned it into an absolute welfare state that now launches rockets into southern Israel. So they totally screwed up because they knew that if Palestinians had jobs and they had purpose and they had meaning, they wouldn't need the rulers of the Palestinian Authority. Sound familiar? Like something that we're dealing with here domestically? So I'll say this, American-Israel alliance is extremely important, but it fascinates me the international obsession with trying to destroy the one state that Jews can call home, that is no more than 8 million people, when Muslims are able to live in 42 other countries with a combined population of 1.2 billion people, and all the missiles are pointed at the one Jewish state. It fascinates me. Thank you.
Yeah.
For being here tonight. I have to say I am your first disagreement.
Yes.
Yes. No, but I truly appreciate both of you and what you do. However, this is one thing that I have a conflict with as an American born here, from being part Mexican, part Arab, part Jewish, part, you know, what they consider a melting pot. It's a melting pot.
Yeah, melting pot.
Yeah. So as an American born here with all of those origins, just as white people have and black people have, and what makes a culture in America?
Meritocracy. That if you work hard and play by the rules, you can have intergenerational stratification. That is something that is uniquely American. And also the American culture is the idea that you shed your previous cultural identity that might be rooted in race and you assume something that is so much more transcendent than skin color. That it's a national identity on freedom, on liberty, restrained government power, the individual initiative, freedom of speech, free enterprise, and that it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter who you worship, it doesn't matter where you come from, but that you can have a room that looks completely different, that worships in different places, and every single one of those people are American. And I use the example all the time, the U.S. gymnastics team in the Rio de Janeiro Olympics in 2016. You look at the women's gymnastics team, you had an African-American young lady, you had a Mexican-American young lady, you had a Jewish-American young lady, and a white American. Every single one of those individuals we all consider to be Americans. The silver was given to the Chinese women's Olympic team. All four of them, Chinese ethnic, Chinese ethnic, Chinese ethnic, Chinese ethnic. If a black person tried to be on that team, they would not be considered Chinese. Same on the Japanese and the Korean. What makes our culture different, what makes our culture unique is that we're multiracial, multilingual, multi-religious, and yet every single component of our society is equally considered American. There is no country like that in the world that has ever existed. Ever.
What was your disagreement? That was a question.
So my disagreement when he said that we are a culture as an America, right? I had conflict now that I hear what I was gonna say was when we're born here among Americans, you hear from the left and some from the right that it's as if you have to forget and put away where your origins are from, being a born Native American. And that's where I was, or where I still sometimes have conflict with, you know. But like you said, we're multiracial, and there's I speak 3 languages, and that's multilingual. Yes, multilingual. So you pretty much covered it. I don't know if you were going to say something.
I was actually here to disagree because that was a question. Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
I really appreciate you guys coming out, big fan. I'm a college student at UCR, and I'm a conservative on campus, and lately it's been a little hard getting dirty looks from people, from different people when I wear my college Republican shirt at UCR. But I do have a question. I do have a lot of professors that try to bash, because I'm Catholic, a Roman Catholic, and I try to bash the Roman Catholic faith and also our president. So my question is, how do I deal with professors trying to indoctrinate me and stating that Catholicism is painted as this bad religion, that we are bad people? And how do I go about trying to deal with professors, making it pretty much down my throat that
dream of a day where a professor would call me racist in class. Like, you have no idea. I was that student. Like, I was that student. Like, I always took them to task. I mean, I remember in my feminism 101 class, she gave me a B, and I clearly wrote an A+ paper. But she just did not like my position, and I mean, I raised hell. And look, I know that that's a hard thing to say, and some people are more timid, and not everybody is like me, where I just go right into the fire, because I really do believe in that there should be morality that governs your classroom. And the morality being based in the idea that you can have different ideas, and if you're willing to present them in a logical way, that should not impact your grade negatively. So I was always the person that, first off, my hand was always up, I was always snickering, but also beyond that, I took it above them. You know, as far as they are, these professors are cowards. At the end of the day, they're cowards, okay? And so they want to say what they can say in the classroom. They are. All of the professors, the majority of them are cowards, right? And they only do what they can get away with. And when someone actually meets them and says, I'm not going to accept that you called me a racist, I'm now going to raise hell, whether that's online, or that's submitting something to our professor watch list that we have, right? Or whether that's going above them and speaking to someone, they will suddenly cower and be afraid to think that you're no longer worth the drama of combating your ideas. So I really think it's important that you find your voice in whatever manner that it is, and you fight these cowards on campus and in the classroom, not with your hands physically, but ideologically.
And I'm going to comment on the Catholic part, because you get a lot of...
Yes, I get a lot of hate on campus being Catholic.
Isn't that amazing?
Our history, I guess, they look at the past and they say, oh, what about the Crusades?
Yeah, what about the Crusades? What about when the Muslims went to Europe? That went well.
It's not true. I go to church, especially when my priest even tells me what's going on in Nigeria to Catholics by Muslims, so it's kind of hard.
Widespread persecution. So here, look, first of all, professors go out of their way to attack people of faith. It's not just a strictly Christian, maybe a Catholic thing, but it's more of a broadly Christian thing. So I'm not a Catholic, I'm an evangelical Christian. I talk openly about it. It's not part of our stump speech, but when asked about it, we comment on it. Why do leftists hate organized Christianity, whether it be evangelical or Episcopalian or Catholicism? Well, first of all, don't value government as the most important thing in your life. It's the church, it's the community, it's your relationship with God. But also, not being a Catholic, I can give compliments to the Catholic Church. You guys have done a lot more to help the poor than the government ever will. Catholic schools, because they have a vested interest to try to lift poor people out of poverty. The final thing I'll say is this, is the militant attitude that professors have against Christians and Catholics in the classroom. I would just love to have even a soft cross-examination of people that are of the Islamic faith, the way that they go after you. Please explain to me how it's permissible that Saudi Arabia is able to continue to get away with the stuff that they do in an Islamic theocratic fascist environment. Yet it's okay to go to Rome, the home of the Catholic Church. You can be a Christian, a Muslim, a Scientologist, a Buddhist, or whatever. You can't be a Christian and go to Riyadh. You can't be a Christian and go to Mecca, the center of the Islamic faith. And so this is the kind of double standard hypocrisy. I know it's so hard to be a Catholic and be a Christian, but do not waver, stay committed.
Yeah, your relationship with your professors is temporary, your relationship with God is forever.
Yeah!
Final thing, I once got in a dispute with a professor that I wish was filmed, but I'll recount the best I can. And I said to this professor, it was one of these speeches a couple years ago, and I said the Bible's the greatest book ever written. 66 books, 35 authors, 5,000 years of history, the most important person ever lived, more wisdom in those pages than any university could ever teach you. And he, of course, disagreed, and he's a historical text professor, which made it interestingly ironic. And I asked him, I said, you teach historical texts. What do you teach? He said, well, I teach, Plato's Republic, and I teach Socrates and Aristotle and Confucius and all these people. I said, well, why don't you teach the Bible? And he said, well, then people might actually start believing it. And in that moment, it all made sense. That they're trying to prevent the proliferation of these ideas, because when people start believing it, they become far less important. So keep fighting. God bless you. We've got about 10 more minutes, wherever that leads us. So.
What's up, Candace? What's up, Charlie? So I'm a big hip-hop fan. I love the culture. I love everything with Yeezy. Yeezy's dope. But my question is, when you think of the OG Tupac, I mean, he was like a pro-guns rights fan, pro-free speech. There's even a photo out there with him and Donald Trump.
I think that was actually photoshopped, because I saw that, and then I went to go hunt for it to see if it was legitimate, and unfortunately it was photoshopped. But I mean, look, I'm obviously a huge Pac fan. I think it's hard not to be a piece of hip hop. Yeah, everything word up. Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, he was more of a poet than he was even a rapper, I think, in many ways. And he was saying a lot of important things, perhaps why he was gone too soon. But there's a lot of good content in hip hop. There's also a lot of bad content in hip hop. And I think that over the course of the last 10 years, the conversation has shifted and the message is much more liberal than it should be. And to bring it back to a time when Pac was telling us about things that are really important would be something that I'd like to see in the near future.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tupac, West Coast.
Candace, so say that. I have a question, but do you mind if I do the anecdote first, because it directly ties into the question?
Sure.
All right. This is more pointed towards you. I've always wanted to be a cop since I was 10 years old. My best friend growing up in the Belmont Shore area of Long Beach, so it's not really that. Those of you from Long Beach get it. But my best friend was black. You know, he was like absolutely my best friend, 3 years younger than me. He looked up to me. We did everything together. And then his mom was a single mother, and it came out that he was being abused. So he got taken out of his home and moved to downtown Long Beach, and he fell into drugs and gang culture. And it absolutely broke my heart. And you know, everything I've been grown up to do is making sure that doesn't happen to people. And now in my college life and late high school, I've noticed that there's been a growing push to anti-cop, and I hate it because some people push for big government, diversity, and protecting other people, and that's the left's ideas. But at the same time, there's cops that are great people, and there's also bad people, but that's just how it is. And they make it seem like cops are against everyone. There's such a anti-cop idea, and I'm wondering if you think that's more something that's spread from a black culture point of view from the 60s and growing on, or do you think that's something that's been founded recently?
Well, I would say overall, that's what the left does. They sell black people ideas that will harm the black community, right? You could say we're harming ourselves, but these ideas were sold to us and packaged to us in the present as if it was going to, bring forth change, whatever it was. And of course, it's something that negatively impacts us over and over again. So the cop, this recent Black Lives Matter, I think, is probably the thing that we should be talking about, which is basically a group of people that lie to the black community, funded by George Soros, $33 million injected into Black Lives Matter via his Open Society Foundation. So why do they do that? Fear is the mechanism that they use to control the black vote. So they need to create something that black people are fearful of every time the election cycle comes around to make sure that in the polls they can control how black people vote. It's very simple. So 2016 election came around, they all got into a room, I'm assuming where that room is, and they said, what are we going to pick for the black community to be super afraid of now? And then they said, aha, police officers, why not? Now, of course, black people have a unique relationship with police officers in general because we account for the majority of homicides in this country, despite the fact that we only represent only 13% of the population. So it was a very easy sell to say to them, you're not the problem, police are the problem, right? And they sold this in this slide. It is disgusting to think that they create a war on police officers in order to secure the black vote. It's all based on lies, obviously. You know, the 16 unarmed black men that year were shot and killed by police officers. So you literally, as a black man, have a higher chance of being struck by lightning than you do of being shot and killed unarmed by a police officer. But if people aren't looking up data, they're looking up emotion. So they're looking up a video of Juan Castile getting shot. They're not looking up how often that actually happens. And trying to reverse that and combat that is an uphill battle because the black community in general, we are emotional. I realized that when I spoke at my first HBCU. I mean, the amount of emotion in that room, you couldn't believe. But then you get through it, and it takes people that are not afraid to stand on the stage in a room with them and say, unapologetically, I support the police and here's why you should too, and presenting them with the fact-based side and not the emotional base. They're so used to emotion. All that's ever being sold to the black community is emotion. But it's taking other pillars of the community to stand up and present the facts and the logic and to stand unapologetic people that are going to help the black community. And let me tell you something, police officers save black lives.
Woo!
disappointment. Maybe you were just waiting for your turn to drum up your courage. All right. Yeah.
How's it going, Candace and Charlie? First off, I want to thank you guys for creating this awesome organization. And so this question comes from my English class. We're talking about technology on how basically we're discussing like the effects of technology, and we have to come from a point of talking about whether you're for or against technology, kind of discussing like all the, there's like negative and pros and cons of technology. And my question is there ever a point where government should step in and kind of take a stance and say that, you know, that the free market should kind of stop and is there any point that government would step in and stop the free market from progressing because it causes harms? And there's different arguments saying that automated utility jobs and things like that.
I'm going to recuse myself from this question because I've watched Black Mirror and I'm a little paranoid. So I'm going to let Charlie answer this question.
Yeah, take over.
Watching Black Mirror on Netflix. I cannot answer this question without bias. But we should talk about China and what's going on in China right now. That's a huge deal.
I know that. That scares me.
So let me say, Candace has said something earlier, and here's something that we in the conservative community need to say more, which is, I don't know. So I don't know if we should go after Google and antitrust, and it's very rare for me to not have a strong opinion on that. No, I don't know. Because I think there's really good arguments for both.
Destroy the AI takeover.
Walk you through my conflict here. So Candace is correct in saying that they've created a pseudo-monopoly. 81% of all search results, you guys can Google it, fact checking, they've created a pseudo-monopoly in the email space, on the browser space, so on and so forth, and they're collecting inordinate amounts of data, and they have their executives bragging about how they can do social engineering and political engineering. And when you have an entire country controlled by 2,000 people in Silicon Valley, that's arguably more powerful than government. It's something that should concern a lot of people. I juxtapose that with being an ardent free market capitalist, thinking that the power of government is something that should be used very carefully and usually is abused. And so I'm conflicted by that. But
Okay, I'm going to debate this because we always try to debate all the time. But I'm
saying I don't know. That's why
of the past of what happens when the government. That is actually to me like the best use of government.
No, I know. I'm just my conflict is this the time to do it, because there's so many other examples that monopolies are allowed to use. With Walmart can be argued as monopolies. So the answer is I don't know, but probably. Because for no other reason than the social engineering aspect of it. And I encourage all of you to watch this new movie, The Creepy Line, that just came out. It's about Google's capacity to socially engineer people, and specifically politically, because there are no Republicans that work at Google, at least no outward Republicans. And if they work there, they get fired and they get found out. Candace and I have both been censored by YouTube, which is owned by Google. YouTube is this third most trafficked website in the world. Google's number one, so they own 66% of the top traffic websites in the world are owned by Google. Here's my big problem with Google and Facebook is that we, American tech companies, are allowing the censorship of Chinese totalitarianism. And so this is what's so sick, is that China is not a free society, in large part because American tech companies built that society for them. Is that our algorithms and our geniuses went over there and were hired by a sinful amount of money by the Chinese Marxist government, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they said, build us a society where we can suppress speech. And that's just so sick if you think about our culture voluntarily went over there and built it.
If I could just interject one more, are you guys aware of what's happening in China right now with the social
social score?
That's really scary. Like a social score, like I was saying that we have a credit score here. They're now doing something that they're going to start implementing as soon as I think next year. And then some people are going to have it where you will have a social credit score, which is to say that the government will be listening to your conversations based off of who you text, how you text them,
what you say,
what your behavior is, who you hang out with. They'll be docking and adding points to your social score.
This was Bloomberg.
They already did.
This was on Fox News, Bloomberg. This is like they've been working on this for years. It's finally
InfoWars.
That's all going to be done. They're going to be able to listen to your conversations that you're having, you say anything against the government, you're going to be docked social points. This is a literal episode of Black Mirror, for those of you guys that haven't seen it. A literal episode is being implemented in China. So that to me is terrifying.
Yeah,
To
take
know
over.
that companies like Google were behind helping them create and design this society is why I am like, I could not be more pro having Google growing up. I think they've gotten way too powerful and they are beyond more powerful than government. They were startled that they were not able to impact the 2016 election. They had meetings, which we've been made privy to now, that leaked, that were on Breitbart, of them talking about how they sort of deal with this going forward and what they're going to do to make sure that they have a bigger impact on our election cycle. So I can't think of a better reason as to why we need to have these big tech companies split up.
Well, and to give credence to Candace's argument, Microsoft was broken up in the 90s. Remember that, when they used to have all those lawsuits and that kind of paved the way for Apple with a lot of market forces. So I'm leaning more in that direction. I'm just very, as a conservative libertarian, very optimistic that everybody's government force, but it's hard not to make the argument that they're in violation of the criminal antitrust act. Sure.
Yeah. Screw Google.
Uno más.
Uno más.
And one more.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So my question is to both of you. At what point in you guys' lives get involved in pro-life movement? Because for myself, I got involved in pro-life movement, especially when I volunteered at a pro-life outreach, campus outreach. Actually, on this very campus a few years ago, I even actually had a radical feminist who actually told me to my face if she knew that she was going to have a child that is suffers with disabilities, visual impairment or any other type of disability. She actually said that I would, choose to avoid you, So she actually said this, and I try to have, respectful, civil dialogue or conversation with her, but actually she wouldn't, change her position, her view on, regards to the issue of abortion. So that's my question to you guys. And thank you for coming to our campus. I know the Turning Point chapter here on campus has been working on getting you guys to be on campus. So thank you for coming.
Let's give it up for
so
you.
Woo!
I'll start out by saying that there is no soul that does not deserve the right to life. And
Yeah.
to that, to develop that standpoint. I obviously, was in school and learned very early on that choice was right. That you learn that in school, indoctrinate you right around high school. You start taking classes, health classes, and they tell you that choice is good and here's what you can do and why women should have choices again. Bringing it back to radical feminism. This is in court and in radical feminism, women's right to choose murder, because that's exactly what it is. The turning point for me was just becoming educated about it, because of course when you learn about abortion, you learn about it favorably. You learn that it's women and they have a right to choose a better life for themselves, and they don't want to bring babies into this world tragically by not having the resources that would be made available to them under different circumstances. And when I learned the origins, I learned about Margaret Sanger, and I learned about the progressive era, and I learned about the fear of of the black race multiplying, and that they wanted to, and I quote, exterminate black people like weeds. That black people are like weeds that need to be exterminated. That's a direct quote from the Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger, who Hillary Clinton refers to as her idol. I was enraged, and then I was more enraged when I realized that she was successful. Black population growth has stagnated. We are the only population that is not growing in America. 60% of all new births are from this Hispanic community. And to realize that she was successful, and that perhaps this is the reason why we're seeing the left start to target all of their focus on illegals and on the Hispanic community and on DACA, is because they are realizing that the Spanish community is extremely Catholic and they tend to keep their children. So that sort of enraged me, and I wanted to be a loud voice for just at least teaching people the real history of Planned Parenthood beyond all of the pink clouds and skittles that you learned about in your textbook when you're in school. It's a horrific organization. It needs to stop being federally funded, and we need to make sure that we are the loudest voices against it. That's my personal opinion. I'll let you know.
Amen.
Thought-provoking points about abortion. No matter where you stand on this, you have
3 points.
It's like the Trinity.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Good things happen in threes.
Yeah.
Except 2 terms, 2 justices, 2 scoops, 2 genders. Except that.
Hey! 3 scoops. 3 scoops.
First and foremost, why do we have a universal definition of when life ends but not when life begins? We all have a scientific consensus that there's a certain thing that happens to brain activity or neuroactivity, and that is considered when life ends. We have a total consensus on that. Yet how do we have disagreement when life begins? We're an industrialized society with more science and more access to technology than ever before, and yet we can't come to a consensus from when life begins. Number 2, kind of a fun point, why is it when people celebrate a pregnancy, they call it a baby shower, not a fetus shower? That's an interesting one to think about, right? Oh, I can't wait to see my fetus's gender. No. I'm having a baby. It's not I'm having a fetus. Or my baby is kicking, not my fetus is kicking. Number 3, it brings to the point of objectivity versus subjectivity. Candace and I believe in the objectivity of life. That means there's an objective beginning of life and there's an objective defense of life. Therefore, if you believe life begins at conception, that life must be protected all the way through its life cycle. With that being said, something does not immediately stop becoming a life because someone shows up in an abortion clinic. Life does not become any more or less relevant based on somebody's choice. It's not how we treat anything when it comes to life in society. Why should it be any different in the womb? So the third thing is, the way our law is actually written, that if a pregnant woman unfortunately dies in a homicide, they call it a double homicide. Both are considered to be lives. If a pregnant woman dies in a car accident, it considers that 2 lives exited the world. That's the way our laws are written.
I hate that argument when people say, you know, they don't, it's 2 months or 3 months, you know, it's not a life yet. And that's so ridiculous. You want to know how you know that it's a life? Because you have to kill it for it not to be born. There's a murder part that has to
happen. And it takes a process that does more harm to the woman than I think our society is ever honest with young ladies about. And Candace is very vocal about it. The spiritual, physical, and emotional harm that it has on an individual is never appropriately expressed in these Planned Parenthood clinics. And that should be an honest conversation for young ladies that go into that procedure, that there is a lifetime harm that happens to them that is filled with regret, emotional, and sometimes spiritual damage. Candace, you're going to say something?
I was going to say, in conclusion, defund Planned Parenthood.
Yeah!
So in conclusion, we have a great president. We live in a terrific country. For those of you involved in Turning Point USA on campus, we are so blessed to have all of you. We want to see all of you at our end of the year event in Palm Beach, Florida, called our Student Action Summit. We'll have anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 students in attendance. Candace and I will both be there.
Yeah, you know, the left is losing. Try to enjoy it when you can. Take some time to objectively laugh at it. And if you guys want to be sunken place demons for Halloween, yeah, you can dress up as Candace Owens.
All kidding aside, we won tonight, despite everyone trying to make this not happen. So enjoy this moment, and please, for the love of God, please get Dina Rohrbach reelected and all these other people. But if Nancy Pelosi becomes speaker, that means that this part of the world voted to give her the gavel back. So all of you, knock on doors, make phone calls, vote. This part of the world will determine the House. Right here, these 3 districts, whether it be Darlice's seat, and Royce's seat, or Dana Rohrbach's seat, you are sitting in the center of what they call the resistance and the blue wave, and you guys can win 2 out of 3 or 3 out of those 3 seats. You will have done a national service to every committed American and patriot that wants jobs in Mount Long. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah! We love you, Candace! Yeah!
All right, that concludes our event tonight. Thank you for coming out. Have a great, safe drive home. Our chapter is an important chapter. All the chapter, Long Beach chapter, can stay. Other chapters as well. Everyone else have a good night. Thank you. America!
Yeah! Woo! Yeah, they're not gonna. Seems like they're not gonna do it. I don't know.
They want a group picture with the Turnpike chapter here.
Oh, okay. Because that one guy was like, "Oh, can I get your autograph?" You know? I don't know. Maybe they are doing it. Can we try?
Yeah, well, I'll get it.
What's that? Oh, you can't. I'm just gonna protect. Oh, fuck it. Let's just go. Huh? Alright, I'm gonna end this stream right now.
Okay.
Thank you guys for watching. God bless you guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for your time.